didn't know exactly where it went. So, but this story is about going to Afghanistan and exactly what that looks like. So, the signal.
Okay. Here you go.
So, what happens is eventually, you know you're going, you try to get your dog in order, you know, who's gonna feed it, your grass, who's gonna cut it, you know, who's gonna take care of your house. Turn off the bills you don't need, make sure you pay the bills you do need, and then you take one last look at your door, and then you're gonna see it one time, and then you realize, I'm not gonna see that for some time. But before you leave, you go to Baltimore, and you never really expected this, but you sit in Baltimore at BWI, and the USO actually, God bless them, they give you this little fanny pack, and in it is like a toothbrush, a calling card, there's like, I don't know, some napkins in there. It's like a little bunch of trinkets that you're gonna use in your travels. And you're like, man, I'm not gonna need this. And then eventually, you're like digging out that toothbrush because you're in Ramstein, Germany, and you're there, sitting there, waiting to go, and you're not know exactly how you're gonna get there. Any military people in the audience? You understand if you've ever taken this trip, Ramstein, but then you're in this other place. And this place maybe that doesn't exist anymore, but it's a tent city in Kuwait. And there's a movie out there where every tent looks exactly the same. And you get there and people are leaving and coming at different hours. It's very awkward because it looks like the surface of the planet. It's like 150 degrees. And then from there you leave to Afghanistan. But in Afghanistan even, there's this place called the Boardwalk. And the Boardwalk is like the cantina in Star Wars. Because you're like, is this really a third world country? Why is there a TGI Friday? Why are the Canadians playing ice hockey in a sandbox? And this place is not unreal. But eventually you start leaving to where you're going to actually do your business. And I was in this place called Zabul, which is from where we were in Kandahar. You kind of fly, and it's like planes, trains, and automobiles where you're on convoys and helicopters. And from Zabul, I traveled out to one base, and then from there you go to a smaller base. And you might go to a place like this. It's like a transition point where convoys go out, helicopters go out. And from there, they told me, they're like, hey, you're going out to one of the villages. And these villages were sitting along the Pakistan border. And we were going to ride in a big helicopter, a Chinook. So I put all my stuff in a tri-wall box, which is a big box. And then they called back and they said, hey, we're going to take a 60, which is a whole lot smaller helicopter. But I never saw my stuff again is the point. I left with a 3-day backpack. But everything that was brought into this village eventually would be brought in by a helicopter, and the whole village would come out to see this thing land and drop off a box. And anyway, this is where we were. This is where the place was. Zabul is actually the province, and Sinan is a little village where we lived. And we lived in a place about the size of a cul-de-sac. We lived in like the walls of a dirt compound in this village. That was the cul-de-sac. And we had about, I don't know, 8 or 9 people in one of these little spaces. That's one of the spaces. That was the good place to live, because that place actually had rooms. And the rest of us lived, there was a hayloft over here, there was a well for water. We used to have to boil stuff to like take a shower. But for some reason we would get random stuff like office chairs with no bottoms. So we would have office chairs with no legs. We'd have to burn trash. This was our front door. And when you hear about burn pits and trash pits, we actually had to take trash out. This was a terrible thing that happened. A rocket actually hit that place and killed one of our Afghan friends as he was running out the door. So it was a dangerous door to enter and exit. And this was one of the other doors, so it's kind of like the theme of my slides is doors. I remember looking through this door, and I thought back, I was like, man, that is one, because this was another place where we lived for a short period of time. And I remember seeing this door, and I was like, geez, that's not really secure. Like, you know, you lock your door. Everybody's got two locks on their door at home. And I remember looking at this, and I was only there for a short period of time. And this was me standing in front of the door where I was living. These windows were handmade, as you see where the sandbags were. And I remember going out one time, and when I came back, somehow the sandbags had pushed the entire window out. And it was raining outside. And I look out, and out the window is these village kids laughing at me because I had to go pick up my sandbags, drag them back inside, build my window back up. It was ridiculous. It's kind of a ridiculous way of living. Everything else was dropped in by parachute. So, and like the ones you've seen recently in the news. And these parachutes would get dropped all over this drop zone, and we'd have to pick them up. And these were the vehicles we had. And these were some of the Afghan guys that worked with us. And I'm happy to report, my man here, Tommy, lives in Houston now. Jay lives in Michigan, and Pete lives in Connecticut. And right at the end of the war, they all got out of there. And Kyle lives in Florida. But this was the rooftop, and this was my last picture as I was leaving the place. And I don't know if it's in the picture, but I said, you know what, this is my parting shot. It was the last rotator, because these helicopters would only come around every 17 days. And if the weather was bad, they wouldn't come back for another 17 days. So I remember they came up to me and said, like, hey, you gotta get out of here, because if you don't get out of here now, you're done. But on the ride back, you go to Kyrgyzstan. I didn't think, I went in one way and I was coming out and we were in Kyrgyzstan. I remember when you get to Kyrgyzstan, you're allowed 2 beers at this place at the airport. And I had no idea what Kyrgyzstan was. Gun in my head told me to point it at the map, I wouldn't tell you. But we go through Kyrgyzstan on the way out. Those are my 2 beers. Russian beers. They're Russian beers. Baltic on number 9. Very good beers. So you get your 2 beers and then you start making your way back to America. And this was after about a year. I didn't know how long I was going to be out there, but they said, you know, it's going to be probably about 12 months. I got out in about 11. It was November. And finally, this was actually Germany, I think, again. It was a European country, but ultimately you land in Baltimore. And I remember going through passport control, and I didn't have a uniform on. I literally left with the clothes I worked on. And I sat on a bench and I thought about that, and I said, man, did that really happen? And that was the last 11 months of my life. So eventually I came back to my door. So that's my presentation.